This is Emma Franklin Bell, and you're listening to the Studio Success Formula podcast.
Welcome to the Studio Success Formula podcast, the business school for dance studio owners. And now for your host, Clint Salter.
Hey studio owners, this is Clint from Studio Success Formula, and thank you for joining us for what I'm hoping will be another episode filled with loads of golden nuggets that will help you grow your dance studio. Our guest today is a wonderful friend of mine. We connected a few years back because we both love business, and after our first conversation, realized we both had a dancing background, and well, the rest is history. She started dancing at the age of 7 and since then studied dance full-time, taught for studios across the country, and even created her own preschool dance program called Fairy Footsteps that she sold in 2014. Today, she'll be sharing with us what works and what doesn't when your aim is to build a studio with preschool classes running at capacity. And we'll also be talking about her new book, How to Run a Preschool Dance Studio. Please welcome our guest on the show today, Emma Franklin Bell. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Clint.
Great to have you. Great to have you. Now, let's jump straight in. Now, we've got many dance studio owners listening who are eager to learn the magic formula about how to grow their preschool classes. Why do you believe this is such a great age group to attract into your studio?
There's heaps of reasons why you'd want to have preschoolers in your studio, but I suppose there's 4 main points that I came up with that I think would really help studio owners. And basically, I suppose the first one is that it's a really strong target audience. So, most young children, especially girls, let's be honest, but boys as well, but most young children do dance. So if you chat to most of your friends and family, the young kids in our communities are wanting to go to dance classes. And so, you're essentially talking to the converted already, and they're not really competing with too many other activities by that age, and they're also not at school. So they're really a great group to zoom in on because they're sort of ripe and ready. So it basically then comes down to needing to know about you and where your school operates. So once you've set your school up, you then want to be targeting them because they're so fresh and ready, and so then they can come to your school. The second one would be that preschoolers become preteens, and in a recent study that I did with over 100 dance teachers, I did a survey of them. The preteen age group, that is the 6 to 10 year age group, is generally the biggest age group in dance studios. Most dance studios have over 50% of their students in that age group. So what's great is the preschoolers lead straight into that age group because they're often the 2.5 to 5, and then they go into the preteens. So they're a great age group so that you can then feed those students straight in there. And also they haven't been to another school, and so therefore there's often an opportunity for you to tap into that younger age group, and you're new and they're new, so you can build those relationships and those connections with those people right from the start, and then carry them through. So that's if you're starting out a new school. And of course, the other point, the fourth point, is the bottom line, and that is that obviously when we're running dance studios, we also have to chuck on that other hat, which is the businesswoman, and remember that the bottom line is really important. And so just a quick figure. If you were focusing on having a goal of say even 100 preschoolers in your school, paying $15 a class over 40 weeks, you'd be looking at another $1,500 a week coming into your school. Even if you were getting half that, 50 children, you'd be halving that, just 1,500, what's that, 750. So, it can really increase overall the bottom line in your business, and so the business side of things is really important. So those 4 key things, I think is a major reason why you would want to tap into that preschool age, but also they're an absolute delight to teach, and they come with very little drama, and so they're just a gorgeous group to have in your school. So I encourage everybody to focus on bringing them in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a complete no-brainer. I mean, when you look at a dance studio and you hit the nail on the head with so many aspects of it, you know, they haven't been generally somewhere before. There's not a huge amount of competition at that age group. I mean, I know when I talk to friends or when we meet someone at a restaurant or whatever and you talk about dance, they're like, oh, I did dance. I danced when I was 3. You know, it seems like everyone danced when they were 3.
Yes, in some form or another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I think that has only grown recently with the dance shows that are around, and dance is really at the forefront of the masses now. So I think it's a great opportunity to be bringing new students, especially preschoolers, into your studio. Now, let's jump on and talk about the first chapter of the book, because that's where you talk about branding, and that's really about how you grow your business by building a brand that stands out from the pack, because we all know that there's a dance studio on every corner at the moment. So what tips can you give our listeners who have maybe neglected to build a brand and they've been more focused on the day-to-day running of their studio? You know, where do they start? And I guess how can they become the next Apple in the dance industry?
I see what you mean. And also, I mean, I've chatted to lots of dance teachers as well who, you know, just feel all overwhelmed with branding. And I think the thing is with branding is that it's actually about capturing a feeling, and a feeling is then what ripples right through your whole school. So in terms of a practical sense, one thing that you can do is you can just take 2 hours, maybe on a Sunday afternoon, try and find a spot in the house that's free, away from people, close the door, and
put the padlock on.
Possible. Yeah, padlock on, and get a big whiteboard or a big butcher's paper thing, and really start to brainstorm. And we're talking specifically about the preschoolers in your school today, but think specifically about what it is with those preschoolers that you do. You know, do you focus on performing arts? Do you focus on jazz? Do you focus on ballet? You know, what is the feel of what you do with the preschoolers? And then start brainstorming all sorts of words that come up, you know, like it could be fun, it could be funky, it could be cute, glittery, whatever it is. And you just put all these down, and there might be colours when you think about this part of your school. And so then what you're doing there is you're actually starting to get the feelings that come out when you're thinking about that side of your school. And then you want to actually make that into what then becomes the name or the logo of your actual preschooler section. And I encourage people to sort of have an umbrella name for their preschool dance section, you know, whether it's called, you know, Funky Kids or whatever it's called. Mine was called Fairy Footsteps. And then underneath that, you can name the classes names as well. I mean, to just sort of say preschool jazz at 4 p.m., you know, it doesn't really evoke anything. No,
exactly.
So that's right. So you really want to, you know, I had Rose Ballet and Violet Ballet, you know, so when they were younger, they were in the Rose Ballet, and then they graduated as they got older into the Violet Ballet. And so you think about these lovely things that conjure up a feeling, and that's what connects people and children, parents, and so on. And it also is what gets people chatting. They go, oh, it's so lovely. They go to, you know, Fairy Footsteps and stuff, or they go to Glitter Kids or whatever it is, and that replicates, you know, it goes right through, ricochets right through into what they wear and the logo and all the rest of it. So it's about that feeling, and it's about rippling through. So do the brainstorm and see what you can come up with, because just 2 hours will be an absolute game changer, and that's what will start to get you rolling on the brand stuff.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great tip. And you know that you and I see eye to eye around branding. You know, in our program, we get our members to actually, in part of the surveys that they send out with their preschool is to ask, why did you come to us and why do you stay? You know, they're two really great questions, because you doing the brainstorming is fantastic. I think then the next step is getting to the customers that are staying with you and say, why do you stay? And they might come up with a whole lot of other great words. And so then you're kind of bringing in what they're saying, what you're thinking, talk to your teachers about it. And I think that's a really great start.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you can do that when you're on the go, or again, if you are someone starting fresh or starting that section, you might be mainly focused on teens and you want to incorporate that section, do the same thing, starting from scratch to get the feeling. Yeah,
it's great. Now, look, I've always admired the way that you ran your dance business, because you're extremely focused on putting systems in place to create a customer experience that was consistent each and every time. So many dance studio owners find it hard to allocate the time to systemize what they do in their business. I'd love to know how you went about that.
Yeah. Well, I'd say I'm a pretty organised girl.
You are.
Anyway,
you are.
Yeah, I'm pretty organised, and had different mentors who have taught me about organisation as well. But I mean, one of the first things in the very early days was I picked up a book called The E-Myth, which was all about entrepreneurship and becoming very, very systemised and sort of running your business like a franchise. And I think that really struck me, because prior to that, whenever I'd run small businesses, to do with even when I ran my own dance school a long time ago, I never knew anything about that, and I was just doing one foot in front of the other, unravelling the business sort of in front of me as it happened. And so there was something about sort of reining all that in, and this book talked about focusing on running it like a franchise. So I'd say that when you think about franchises, they really do have incredible systems, and absolutely everything is, T's crossed and I's dotted. So, and what that does is it actually creates an incredible sense of control, and that makes you feel very powerful, because you actually know exactly what's happening and how you actually respond and react to things, because everything has kind of a little note attached to it, and it might seem a little bit annoying or something in the beginning, but over time it's just unbelievable how you can get it to work. So yeah, I had systems for everything. I had an email system, marketing system, uniform system, teacher system, social media system. Yeah, and I think that's how I was able to be living in Sydney and have children coming in 2 locations in Perth on different days with different teachers at different times. Never have met most of the mums. I think I met about 5 mums. Yeah, and so people have said to me, how did you do it? And honestly, it was only the systems that allowed me to do it. And it's that, short-term thinking, whether you react now, or long-term thinking, which is, putting those systems in place, writing them up, having little manuals everywhere, and actually having that long-term thinking so that you really do run your business like a tight franchise, so that then when I was able to sell it, the lady who took it on was able to expand it quickly because of the systems that were in place. Yeah, so I think with systems, that's the key. Maybe read the book or study something like McDonald's, look at how it's how the franchise model works, and work out what systems you need and become very organised.
Yeah, awesome. And I think it's important, we've got studio owners that are looking to build a studio that they can sell down the track, but it's also very important for those studio owners that are not thinking about selling and just want to grow their business. Because we talk a lot about, create it once, do it many times. You can create the system once and then you can pass it on to a teacher, or pass that system on to your administration staff and support team.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And as I said, one of the main things that it helps with is that feeling that you're really, steering the ship. Because the bigger that your school gets, the more that it can start to feel out of control. And you will tweak and adjust. So in the beginning, you might think, well, how can I do that when I haven't really set up a social media thing? That's fine. You do the social media stuff for maybe a month. You'll tweak, you'll adjust, you'll fling stuff out, keep stuff in, and then start to develop the system once you've actually ironed out all of those issues.
Yeah, awesome. Now, look, speaking of creating a consistent experience for the customer, let's talk about how we can build outstanding relationships with our dance families, even in those times when a parent is extremely frustrating and causing us a lot of stress in our studio. So what are your keys to creating what I like to call a lifelong customer?
Yeah, great. Well, I'd say that, I mean, the first one is leadership, and often when I have chatted to different dance studio owners, sometimes they're not as quite on the ball with the leadership skills. So also as your school gets bigger, you have to step into more of a strong role, and so having that leadership about you, and the whole way that you interact, and the whole way that you communicate, and the way you speak to people is really important. So the leadership skills makes you look and feel and sound in control and in power. So that's really important. But the second one too is also the understanding. So it's the understanding that again, so if we talk about the preschool age group, because that's the focus here, often those parents have never been involved with dance before. And so, I mean, I came up against something where, one of the mums said to me, how do I tie her ballet ribbons? Like, how do I do that? And it was so sort of, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, that's really back to basics. I'd sort of forgotten that you'd even have to explain that to someone, So yeah, you can so what you want to do is you want to understand that those parents are right back at the basics. And so with the preschoolers. So what you want to do is actually really relate to them in a very patient way, and you always make them feel that they are in the loop. You really want to be guiding them every step of the way. And so we had, a high level of communication with customers, and I mean, that's what made it really effective. I mean, we had, the list goes on. We had, an initial email in terms of touch points. This was initial email, or whether it was phone, follow-up email, details about dance shops, what's expected in terms of, at classes, basic stuff. And emails a few days before class, monthly newsletter, daily updated Facebook page, text messages, if classes were cancelled or running late, refunds for cancelled classes, phone calls if there was an emergency, never rushing people, thank you cards, Christmas cards, presents. It was a really high level of communication. And so that ensured that we actually ended up having no complaints, no dramas, no unpaid fees, because the level of communication was so high that parents felt so nurtured, I think, and they felt so connected with. And as I said, running that on the opposite side of the country, I suppose maybe forced me to ramp up that level of communication, because I wasn't actually there on the ground level. So it's the stepping into the leadership role, being really understanding of where your customer is at, where the parent's at, and number 3, the touch points, and that comes down to the system. So in the system, it'd be, what touch points do I do with these parents? Are they being communicated with, enough? And again, I would survey, and I did say to them in a survey that I conducted, what about the communication? Is it too much or too little? And they said it was at the right amount.
And I think that, I think the touch points are important. I think one of the big things, though, that I see a lot with members that first start coming into our program in the community is that they're doing a lot of communication, but it's reactive communication. So one week they might send out 10 emails to the one, to the one group. Right. The next week, then maybe for 4 weeks, there's nothing. And then there's a newsletter, maybe once every couple of months, it's like 10 pages long. So I think in what you're saying is that, we like to put together a communication schedule so that they know exactly what's going out and how frequently things are going out. The monthly newsletter is an awesome idea. We talk about that as well. But it's having that system. You had a system in place, a plan in place to go, okay, today the newsletter's going out. Okay, next week we're telling them about X, Y, Z. You're in Facebook, you've got a community there that know that you're training. Okay, check the Facebook page, or we talk about the Facebook group, because that's where we're giving you all the updates. So it sounds like you were, again, very systemized and you had a plan in place when it came to communication.
Yeah, and that sounds fantastic. Yeah, what you guide them through within the program, because it's just so important, and it can't be underestimated. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, look, I want to talk about the programs, because the programs you wrote for Fairy Footsteps, the ballet classes, were extremely popular with your preschool students. So what are the key ingredients you believe make for a program for little ones that keep them entertained, engaged, and continually building on their skills?
Yeah, well, that's right. There are a few key things when I read this question that I thought about. And I mean, the number one would be, for me, I mean, for different people it might be different, but for me, I found that, the teachers are really important. And we'll talk more about the teachers a bit later probably. But, the teachers, who is that person who's teaching those preschoolers? Because I think sometimes, again, we might underestimate it and just think, oh, we'll lock in, her or him or da-da-da, and we go through when we're doing our timetable for the year, and have we really thought about their sort of personality and enthusiasm level for the preschoolers? But the second point would be the music. Obviously, the music needs to be really varied, and a lot of teachers will be really across this. They'll be really aware of, age appropriate and the type of music that's important. But, again, you might just want to refresh and think, okay, what am I using with them? It's always good to revisit these things and just check, and am I mixing it up? We used a lot of instrumental musical theatre pieces and stuff, for example, and they were really popular. I've always loved musicals, and sort of bringing in that musical feel, children often, and so because they were instrumental, they had that classical edge, because mine was a ballet program, but that they loved that. And also, obviously, themes and props, so without a doubt, the exercises and dances that had a theme and used props were so popular. And I mean, it does take a bit of time and energy and thought to actually go through and think, what theme am I going to work with here? What prop would go really well? It does make your suitcase heavier, and it does make, but at the end of the day, it really pays dividends, because it's just, it's so much more effective, and the children just love it. And I mean, there are a couple of other things, like I had my whole room was sort of had a certain setting, which sort of, teaching early stagecraft skills. So I would plot out in the room using certain props like trees and stools and things, so that the room was showing the children, the fourth wall and prompt, opposite prompt, and actually teaching them stagecraft stuff by putting anchors in place in the room, and that was really effective. But I'd say those were the main things. And then we also did a gradation of stuff, so they would learn things, and of course then they would build upon, and if they're a bit older, they're doing stuff that's a little bit harder. And also we had acknowledgement at the end of every term, where we gave certificates to acknowledge the work that they'd done, and they loved that, because then they could come and demonstrate the work to the parents and get their certificate, and it increased the level of sophistication. And I think, again, sometimes preschoolers and young children might be underestimated a bit, and I think that they are quite sophisticated in their whole approach. And so if you acknowledge them and stuff, they really do step up. So so those were the main things that we did, and it was the combination, it was the cocktail that came together that created a few cocktails.
The cocktail, I'm sure it was. A couple of cocktails gets the creativity juices flowing.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That created a very effective program.
Yeah, awesome. Now, you talked about the teachers, and we know that we could have the best program in place at our studio, but if the teachers who are teaching it aren't world class, then we can't really expect to build and grow our business. And I know you had a really strict kind of recruitment and training process for your teachers when you owned Fairy Footsteps. So can you walk us through the most important aspects of hiring and then training the right people for our preschool classes?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, I've got about 4 points here that I thought would be really helpful, and that is that basically the person has to really genuinely love this age group. So it's sort of if you're good enough, you're old enough. It doesn't matter what age you are that's teaching the classes. You have to really love that age group and have that very warm and welcoming, inclusive feel, because young children, they're stepping into, again, it's getting back into that understanding stuff around, where is this little 3 or 4 year old's kind of mindset at? This is all fresh. So they have to have this really inclusive feel, like welcoming them into this space. And that's why I would mark out the space as well, so that when they stepped into this space, they weren't off with mummy anymore. They weren't off at the play sand thing out the back or something. They were here. They were in the space. So having that person who can do that, and often I come from a children's entertainment background as well, so having that element of performance and even some acting stuff with that draws out of that teacher is really important. So almost a teacher who's a bit like a play school presenter, who can really sort of get those children into the space in a kind of a different way, which is how you can capture them at such a young imaginative, highly, highly imaginative and highly based on imagery at that age. When I spoke to a child psychologist about this, when I was in the early days, she talked about how much, imagery and colour and, all of that stuff is so important. So doing that's really important. And then, in the book I talk about how I think it's really important to try and, not just be good, but be great, not just be competent, but be excellent. So that when, and again, this can be sort of trained into the teachers. You can talk to them about how to really step up. But basically the personality and the enthusiasm is really important. So I would look initially quite often at the personality and the enthusiasm, the love of dance, the love of children, the enthusiasm in them as a person, and then make sure that their skills stacked up. I have in the past, obviously hired all sorts of people, and I do remember once I hired based purely on this fabulous CV and fantastic technique, and, put this person in there, but they did not have that enthusiasm, that sort of the right energy for that age group, even though they were great at dance and technique, and so it didn't work. So that's really become really critical. And the other thing too is that if you're using those leadership skills and you're a great leader, you'll become known as a school that people want to work for. So, and I've had that before where people have said, I'd like to come and teach at Fairy Footsteps, over somewhere else, because they've heard how fantastic you are at running the studio. So that's another critical part. But also one of the main things I think is actually having training and meetings and lunches and all the rest of it, and again running it like a business. So again, as I said, when I came into this dance business, I wanted to run it like a business. So I had training days with teachers and I paid them. I took them to lunch and I paid them. I had dance manuals, I had information manuals, they're all in the book and stuff. But what I did was I made sure that I ran it so that it had this real level of being a tight ship, being professional. And again, it might seem like, there's quite a bit of capital outlay there, but it's the long-term thinking, because if you do that, then you'll have those teachers stay long-term and you'll have that kind of reputation built long-term. It won't be fly-by-night stuff. So I think having I've chatted with teachers who say, we have some meetings here and there,
Or reactive.
It needs to be, at the beginning of the year, you get the teachers in, you have a meeting. This is what's happening in this year. These are the plans. So everybody's on, you might even have ideas for what's happening with the end of year concert. You'll be sort of giving an overview of how 2015, 2016, whatever is going to look. And then you have these, whether it's monthly meetings or 2 monthly or end of term, whatever it is, you've worked out that you have these meetings. And with the training for the program, I would meet with teachers and we'd do 1 1 or 2 days where, we'd hire a studio or use a studio and actually go through the program, talk about the program, go through, this is what I want you to do with these props. This is the feel that I want you to have with the students when you're using these props. Then it was all videoed, so they had access to those videos on a private YouTube thing. So it was really, really, everything was treated really, really professionally. So then the teachers rocked up really, really professionally. And their uniforms as well, they had to wear, the right attire, and everything was there. So the expectations were high, but as a result of that, the effectiveness in general was high.
Yeah, I think it's important you talk about expectations, because so often the dance studio owner has one expectation that they might not have communicated to the teacher. And so they then judge their teacher and say, well, they're not doing that, or I want them to do that. And what I always am saying is, do they know that? Have you had a conversation with them? Are you on the same page? Because I think a lot of the time, sometimes the studio owner and the teacher are not on the same page, and that's where some challenges can start to come up. But if you meet them, like you said at the beginning of the year, get clear on the vision. Guys, this is what we're about this year. This is what we're aiming to achieve. This is the experience we want to provide for our dance families and for our students, so that everyone's really clear. I don't think you can be too clear when it comes to communicating with your teachers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, again, because I was in a different part of the country, so after every week after they'd had their classes, they'd finished their last class, and we'd schedule, that the next morning I would ring them and we'd actually do a debrief. How did that go? How was, Janet this week? How was da-da-da? And so they could also let off steam. They could talk about anything that was raised, all the rest of it. So that was a weekly thing. Yeah, and then every, we would have the training and all the rest of it. So it was all keyed in. And that's right, you're not reactive. You're actually on the front foot as opposed to on the back foot.
Yeah, and again, it's all planned. It's all in the diary. It's all up on that big wall planner for the year. You've got your kind of key dates that things are happening with your teachers. Yeah. And I mean, again, it's all about the people, and I think people forget sometimes, that it's all about, at the end of the day, the students are people, the parents are people, the teachers are people. So therefore, they all have to be on the same page, all have to be loved, all have to be communicated with, all have to be nurtured. And part of your role as the studio owner is being a people manager and communicating. And so if the focus can really increase on the people management, I think the school will really run smoothly. Yep, exactly. I love it. Great advice. Now, Emma, to wrap up, I'd love to know what's your last piece of advice for studio owners out there who want to build a solid and successful preschool dance program in their studio?
Yeah, well, I suppose wrapping up all of that stuff that we've talked about, the 4 main keys sort of taking away from all of that stuff would be: run your school with systems like a franchise, brand the preschool section of your school, so it's everything from name to uniforms, train your teachers and have a system around engaging with them, and create a specific customised program for this age group. And I think in the preschool section, if you made a commitment to those 4, I think it would absolutely change your life. And look, some of you will be doing it, and that's fabulous, and others will be starting out and wanting to tweak stuff. But yeah, those 4 will really, really be a game changer.
100% agree. And I think you're right in saying, and people go, change my life. And I would say 100%, putting systems in place alone will change your life. I think that's a huge one. But running your studio, running your preschool, the preschool area of your studio, as a business.
That's
stepping
right.
up, being the entrepreneur.
And I think just sort of thinking about other teachers I've chatted to and stuff, when you also do this and there's that level of really professional, tight ship stuff, you can be charging certain prices that someone else who's not doing that can charge, because you're actually you are shifting the school into that really professional, tight ship kind of way of operating, and the parents don't even flinch because they turn up and everything's organised and the teacher's lovely, and they feel really good, and people see value in paying for that.
Yeah, and they're calm. They know what they come in, they know what they're expecting. That there's nothing erratic, because there's nothing worse than a studio owner running around like their head cut off, like a headless chalk, stressing about, because that just puts everyone else on edge.
Yeah. Oh, and we've been there, and I mean we've worked for studios or run studios like that in the past, and that's why when I set Fairy Footsteps, I really wanted to be strategic about it, because I hadn't in the past.
Exactly. Look, we all live and learn. Thank you so much for all of that great wisdom about how we go about building and growing our preschool numbers in our studio. Emma, I know you've got a great book out. Tell us a little bit more about it and where people can go to pick up their copy.
Great. Okay. Well, 3 places. My website, emmafranklinbell.com, and Amazon, and also the book website, which is howtorunapreschooldancestudio.com. So if you pop along to any of those places, it will be there.
Awesome. And we'll have all those links on the show notes as well. So you can head to studiosuccessformula.com, click on the podcast, and you can see all of those links with the interview. Awesome. Thank you again, Emma. Great to speak with you. Thanks so much for sharing all of that great knowledge. And, my last words is get out there and start building your preschool dance studio, because like Emma said before, it just creates this amazing foundation to then filter through to the rest of your studio. These children get older and they need other classes to go to. So they turn 6, they turn 10, they go 12. And then you'll find that a lot of, some of them, not all of them, will be with you for life if you provide a great service.
Oh, that's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Love it.
Thanks again, Emma, and we'll talk to you again really soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you enjoying the Studio Success Formula podcast? Then we'd love for you to share the love. We want to help more dance studio owners become go-to studios, so we'd greatly appreciate you writing us a review on iTunes. For taking the time out to do so, every month, Clint will be selecting one lucky dance studio owner to receive a Power Business Coaching session. Simply visit the iTunes store today, search for Studio Success Formula, click on ratings and reviews, and then write your review. Thanks in advance. Take care, and we'll see you next time.